Hi there, and welcome to the Surviving and Thriving in Residency podcast. I'm Charley Lowry, your host and director of GME Relations at PracticeLink. This show is all about exploring the world of graduate and undergraduate medical education. We'll dive into the real-life experiences, successes, and challenges faced by medical students, residents, and fellows, while also highlighting valuable tools to support you, whether that's financial planning, student aid, or the many free resources provided by PracticeLink. If you're thinking about med school, currently studying, or deep into residency or fellowship, this podcast is here to offer insights and support to make your journey a bit easier than those before you. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Surviving and Thriving in Residency. I am your host, Charley Lowry, and today I am honored to have with me McKenna Redwine, fourth-year medical student who actually just graduated from the Medical University of South Carolina. I would like to welcome you, McKenna, and first of all, give you a big congratulations on graduating from medical school. That's got to be a great feeling for you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Yes, it's been a great feeling. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So I have a million questions for you because you just finished, you just went through the match. All of that happened. So many useful answers for our listening audience. Of course, the match is always a big topic, and I always get a lot of questions from medical students about the match. But tell me about your decision to go to medical school. Let's go back in time and tell me what influenced you to go to medical school, and when did you decide to pursue this journey?
Well, I actually had a really incredible fortune of getting to move overseas when I was in high school, which at the time felt like sort of a saving grace because I was in a school that wasn't very challenging and there was just sort of like not enough busyness to keep me out of trouble almost. I ended up getting to move to Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and I was so excited for the opportunity, and it felt like, okay, maybe I can really do something with my life. So on the plane ride over to Dubai, I just sat and thought, if I'm really created for a purpose, like what could that purpose be? And I was 15, so I'd never actually really sat down and thought, what do I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And then sitting there thinking about it, I just thought, what am I good at? Like, what do I think is interesting? And by the time I got there, I was like, maybe I could be a doctor. And that was the first time I ever thought it. And then the school I went to in Abu Dhabi was amazing. It was a bunch of international students. It was international curriculum, I should say. And it was really challenging. It was super hard. The culture was completely different. It was like everyone wanted to be smart. Everyone worked hard at school. Everyone was super ambitious. It wasn't like a typical American high school where there's thousands of people. And so the dream just became reaffirmed more and more. And ever since then, it's kind of like I knew nothing else would fulfill me like going to medicine.
Wow. So now how long were you in Abu Dhabi?
I just finished high school up while I was there. So I was there for about 3 years.
Wow. Great experience for sure. So you came back to the U.S. You did your undergraduate in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. I did. I went to Furman. I studied neuroscience and philosophy.
Wow. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about the application process to medical school. What led you to MUSC, and how many schools did you apply to? And did you know kind of what field you were thinking about going into at that point?
I was somewhat non-conventional in that I finished my undergrad and took some time off.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a physician friend who was like, don't go straight in. You should live your life a little bit before you apply. So ultimately, I ended up in Denver getting my master's when I was applying for medical school. I applied to, it's been a while. I want to say like 15 schools, maybe. That sounds like a lot, maybe more like 10. I interviewed with most of them and then ultimately ended up picking MUSC because it was closer to my family. I have a lot of family in South Carolina. I was out in Denver sort of all by myself. I have a daughter. I'm just trying to think how old she was. I think she was like 2 or 3 when I was applying. And my family was already so mad that I took her away out to Denver. So I said, okay, we'll come back to South Carolina for school. And it's a great school and a great location. So it was kind of an obvious choice.
Okay. Do you remember having any hiccups or any issues with the medical school application process or Was it difficult, or do you remember that whole process?
I think more than anything, it was just so tedious. There's so many essays you have to write. And one of the best things I ended up doing for that was I had a close friend and we did it together and we did everything in a shared Google Doc. And so when I was burnt out on writing my own essays, I would go to her Google Doc and just put in edit suggestions. And we kind of fed off each other like, oh, I really like how you answered that question. I'm going to try and like reword it and make it my own and my answers. And it was just really helpful having like a point person who I thought was very competent and good at editing my own stuff. So
Yeah, and it's always easier to go through things with someone if you can through the process, right? That helps.
absolutely.
Okay, so you apply, you get in. Happiest moment of your life at that point, and then tell me about year one. How was that? What were the struggles in year one, and just your overall feeling? I can't imagine the anxiety going into the classroom for the first time.
Yeah, I guess, I'll say that I decided a long time ago that anxiety is just, I'm actually just excited. And that's just tell that like anxious feeling in my body that, no, you're just excited. You're not anxious. So I really think I was more excited than anything. And also, I think I've been through enough challenges at that point that I was like, there's no way it's going to be more than what I could handle. Then you get there and you're like, oh, wow, that fire hose analogy, they really mean it. I think what was most challenging for me, though, was just being a single mom because it was just me. I didn't have any family in Charleston yet. So my daughter was going to school and then after school. So I had like X amount of hours in the day to get through the content and study. And then it was really hard to, have friends outside of that or do much to take care of myself. Luckily, I was able to run and that was easy exercise. But that was probably the hardest part was feeling a little bit isolated as a parent who didn't have a partner and who still had to get through the same amount of material as all these fresh out of college, 20 something year olds.
Uh-huh.
So that was a little strange. But I think it also helped balance things out because, I had a life outside of medical school. And I think that really helped ground me in who I was and didn't make my grades or my accomplishments in school that didn't define me on any level because it was just something I was doing on top of what I was really doing, which was parenting, obviously.
Right. And it was good to, I'm sure, have the family support as well, having family close by.
Yes. They would come down sometimes. First year, there wasn't as much as would have been appreciated. I think I just didn't sleep the first year. I think back and I'm like, how did I survive that year? If anyone's in medical school, I'll say Sketchy. It's this online platform for studying. It puts pictures to whatever concepts you need to know. Saved me. Absolutely saved me.
Oh, okay. Great advice. So how does the curriculum work there for first year, second year? Is it all classroom all the time for the first 2 years?
There's some clinical sprinkled in. It is mostly preclinical curriculum. Fortunately, when I started, it was right after COVID, so it was all virtual. They had in class you could go, but you could pick.
Okay.
Which for me, I can't spend 4 hours a day trying to pay attention all at once. So it was helpful to have a flexible schedule with that.
When you look back now, what would you spend less time worrying about or having, stress over? What would you spend more time focusing on if you were talking to yourself walking in the first day, just for years 1 and 2? Anything you would do differently?
Maybe this isn't necessarily a normal med school answer, but since taking care of my daughter and feeling the mom guilt all the time was probably one of the hardest things, I think that I would have leaned harder into like my church community and people who are actually in the same phase of life as me so that I could have, more friends for my daughter and people to help me with her when things got really hectic instead of just running around and, getting stressed and like not being the best mom and showing up how I would like to in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that once I grew community in my school too, like in my classroom, found those few quality people, that made all the difference in the world to have people to study with and who could help me fill in the gaps when I was like, you spent 5 hours on this, I only got 1, like hit me with the highlights, and that made such a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe I just would have tried to find those people sooner and wasted less time on, sometimes there can be a little bit of like competition and selfishness I want to say like maybe like a self-preservation, like I want to be in the top of the class type of personality. I think I wish I'd censored for that sooner, because those people are not interested in the well-being of other people. And it was nice to find people who I could have more of a symbiotic study and life relationship with.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of times I talk to residents and fourth year medical students, and I always tell them when they're getting ready to start residency, find your people, find your community, find your mind, body, spirit, wherever that may be, but find that quickly, because that will be your grounding point. That will definitely help you keep going, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I will say it's nice if you can find it quickly, but I'd also say don't get discouraged if you don't find it quickly, because the worst thing you could do is go quickly and root yourself in a group that doesn't actually suit you and feel like there aren't other options.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So tell me a little bit about third year and fourth year. How was that set up? So third year, you went on your clinical rotations, stepping into a hospital. How was that? What was your first rotation? Do you remember in third year?
Let's see. I eased into it. I did the easier ones first. By easier, I guess I mean less time intensive. I think neurology was my first one.
Okay.
Which was good. It was a good balance of, inpatient in the hospital and outpatient. Everyone was super gracious since they knew we were fresh clinical students. I will say, though, third year was easily the hardest year of all the years. For once, it wasn't on my schedule. It was, you're going to be here from this time to this time, and that's it. And then guess what? You're going to go home and study after this time is up. So for me, not having that flexibility was very tough.
Wow. And did you know at that point going into third year what specialty you wanted to pursue, or did it happen after third year rotations?
Well, during my time off between undergrad and going to medical school, I worked as a patient care tech in an ICU as well as an emergency room. And I particularly really loved the emergency room. So I went in thinking like, maybe I'll do that. But I didn't want to go in thinking, oh, I know what I want to do. So I tried really hard to appreciate each rotation and think of it as like, could I see myself doing this? And be as open as possible about it. I asked a lot of questions on the rotations too to people, like what is like the attendings? What does your life actually look like? Are you able to be around your family? Do you feel like you get enough variety? Like what's your favorite thing? What's your least favorite thing? And people love to talk about that. So I got a lot of really good insight from those conversations. But yeah, by the end of third year, I rotated through everything and I was like, okay, cool. I really only liked the most intense portions of every specialty. Like in neuro, I loved like the stroke. I liked the brain attacks. In medicine, I liked where, people were actually coding or the different procedures we would do. So I was like, okay, I guess it's inevitable. I'm going to do emergency medicine. It just makes the most sense.
That's great. Any hiccups, any advice for anybody listening? Again, when I talk to students and residents, one thing I tell them is, it's great to always seek advice from the class before you on certain things, but it's also you have to filter that information. So if you're going into third year rotations, someone tells you they rotated with a preceptor and they had a horrible experience, and that preceptor may be on your schedule, don't take that to heart because everybody's personality is different. You may mesh well with that preceptor, and I think sometimes that can get scary when you hear stories from the class in front of you. It can cause a little bit of panic and anxiety there too.
Absolutely. I think that's true throughout anything in life with people you meet. I think that's also important for anyone in medicine or not to take it with a grain of salt, because it's like you said, different personalities meshing. I do think that with regards to talking to people in the classes above you, I had a lot of help with how did you set up your schedule? How did you preference things? And what do you think worked out the best or that you wish you did differently? Like a lot of people did internal med at the end of their third year so that they were prepared when they took step one. Some people took it at the very beginning of the year because then they were better prepared for the following rotations. So things like that were really helpful to hear from the class above.
Hey residents, ready to land your first job after training? PracticeLink.com can help. Our free resource center has everything to get you started, from CV tips to contract advice. Visit PracticeLink.com's resource center today And while you're there, create your free account to unlock even more tools for your success.
For fourth year, you've made it through your third year rotations. You're doing audition rotations. How many audition rotations did you do?
I did two aways for emergency. I guess if you count the one at my school, I did 3.
Okay. And how was that?
Oh, I loved it. It was so fun. It was really cool to do my favorite thing, which is emergency medicine, and get to see how it is at different hospitals. I personally did one at another academic institute that was really nice, really well funded, sort of like one end of the spectrum. And then I did one at a more community style of hospital, which was, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was good perspective to see the range of what emergency medicine can mean.
And so what led you to your decision? Did you know right off, or did you have that warm, fuzzy feeling while you were rotating, or what led you to decide on your top choice?
It was during the rotation that it was not just like the way the program was and the fact that we got to do a lot of high acuity things. It was kind of like the people. I just felt like my personality meshed well with theirs, and the culture was one where I felt like I could be the most myself. And I feel like day in and day out, whether you love your job or not, if you can't like vibe with the people, then it's probably not a good fit. It may even be more particular to emergency medicine that a lot of things are kind of vibes, because you spend so much time working with the nurses, the respiratory therapists. It's such a team sport that you really have to get along with the culture that you're going to put yourself into. I had one, I guess he was an attending, but he was one of the professors who worked with students. And he was like, yeah, you can make those charts all day of like pros, cons, and list each school out. He was like, go off of what feels right, and I promise you'll make the decision that's correct for you. And he said that, and I was like, good, that's what I was going to do anyways, but you made me feel safe to do it.
That's good. Let's talk about the match process. So how was all of that? What were your feelings like going into the match, and even your classmates? I'm sure there was a lot of discussion. And so tell me about the match and how difficult you felt the process was, and just some of your feelings on it.
I think that one of the most difficult parts of the match is easily step 2, especially now that step 1 is pass fail. Step 2, the score pressure, it was just intense. Not as much for me, because emergency medicine is, I'd say, a little bit more of a qualitative application. Like I said, a lot about the vibes. But for like 90% of my friends and the people in my class, it was like the anxiety was so high. Being on campus or being in the library was not a healthy space. I think that there was just so much pressure on that score. That score determined so much of people's future. I mean, even for me, I was anxious, and I don't really get that anxious, but I think that's probably going to be the hardest part for most people, because it feels like that one score that you get one shot at defines who you are as an applicant. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways it does for a lot of specialties, but I do think that it is considered in context, especially if you're going into a specialty that makes the most sense for you.
There's a lot of just overwhelming mental stress involved with that. Just can't imagine, We always talk about what happens if you stumble on your boards. Most people, it's kind of a process no one really wants to talk about. It's such a blow and such a hard thing to come back from. Just a very, very difficult process. So I just can't imagine that from my perspective. I mean, I've worked with medical students for a long time. There's nothing like it. If you have trouble with boards, the whole anxiety leading up to it, it is very, very, very taxing on you, I think.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of those people I know end up with testing anxiety, which ends up hurting them. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where me having a daughter, me having this whole like real full life without medical school made it so that my grades didn't define me. And so therefore I was much less anxious. I didn't get as discouraged if I felt like I didn't do as well as I wanted. And so I think anyone listening, anyone who's aspiring towards it, you've got to find a way to define yourself internally, not by the external feedback you're going to get, because you're going to get a lot of harsh feedback. Even if you got an all A's your whole life, medical school will teach you that you are not always going to be an A student.
Right. Yeah, you're right. So you matched. Do you want to share where you matched?
Yes, I'm staying at MUSC for emergency medicine.
It has to feel good, right? I mean, first of all, to have medical school behind you, right?
Oh, it's such a weight off.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I had a dream the other night that something happened and they were like, "Oh, you actually have to start all over again." And I was like, "No." Terrible dream. So no, it's such a relief. It almost is kind of surreal, especially the fact that they're like, "I'm technically a doctor now." It's like I've always been like coming towards it, but I'm actually technically a doctor. So it's kind of mind-blowing.
Student doctor is a thing of the past. That term is gone now. Yeah.
I'm so glad I never have to walk in the room and say, "I'm McKenna, I'm your medical student for the day." I'm so happy I don't have to ever say it again.
Ah, nice. So do you have an orientation week or 2 weeks, or how's your orientation set up?
So from what I understand, we haven't received the official schedule, but I know orientation starts June 23rd, which is technically a week before our start date.
Okay.
But I think that MUSC does it so that all of July, all the interns are in the ED.
Okay.
We have like maybe 7 shifts. They're all like princess shifts. It's kind of just to get our feet wet. And then I think they have like different training sessions for us scattered throughout outside of the hospital. That's my understanding based on my sub I did last year. So they really ease us into it.
So what do you think is going to be the big challenges? I mean, the good thing is you've been with MUSC. That's a good thing. You're not changing towns. You're not looking to move to a new city. So that's a good thing. You still have your family there. But what do you think will be some of your upcoming challenges with first year? I want to have you back on the show and we'll talk about this in a year or two and see what you
We'll
say.
see how it went. Well, what I've heard across every resident I've talked to, really in any specialty, they say that the first year is figuring out workflow. So how to not get too in the weeds, how to keep patients moving, how to prioritize what needs to be done. So just getting more efficient at doing the actual job. I personally right now am most terrified for the fact that I feel like most of my clinical knowledge has fallen out of my head in the past year. Ever since my last away rotation, it's been very easy rotations. Haven't had to do a lot of thinking, haven't had any tests. So I feel a little rusty, I guess, in that way, in my medical knowledge. Hopefully that'll come back quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I always wonder if there's that lingering thought some days on the first few days of we need a doctor. And then you think, oh, wait, that's me. I'm the doctor. Yep. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have to make these decisions. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's compounded by the fact that we'll have medical students under us who have just taken, step 1, who are trying to impress. And they're going to know more than me in my first month. I'm going to be like, oh, I haven't studied that in a year. So like, you probably know what to do for this like congestive heart failure patient. Please have the floor.
Yep. So let me throw this at you. What do you think about AI?
Oh, I think it's so helpful.
What's the future look like for that with the medical field?
I wish I had used it more in some cases. I think it can be really helpful for, okay, give me the cliff notes on this particular pathology, or could you put this into a flow chart? So like copy paste a whole paragraph about how something works, like put it in a flow chart so I know the order in which I need to do things. I think that that's probably what I will use it for. We currently, I'm not sure if MUSC lets their interns use it, but they have this, it's called a dragon. You talk into it and it auto-populates your notes. So instead of having to type and go back.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really helpful for the time management aspect. I mean, unfortunately, AI can't run a code or do a lot of the things that we're going to need to do because it's a lot of procedures. But I guess that means I have good job insurance.
That's so true. I am seeing a lot of AI applications, that are popping up everywhere for notes and for just different things. I actually went to a conference a while back and they had maybe 6 or 8 AI simulators. And it was just like 6 or 8 people standing there in boxes that would interact with you. And you could, interact with them on what their symptoms are or things like that. So, at some point I can see the sim labs being all AI patients,
Yeah, I think that it's useful for checking in, and probably like at least 50 to 60% of people who come into the ED. I think that the ED is unique in that social context is much more important than in other places, because you have malingering, or you have people who have secondary intentions, or just different things where it's like, if you know what to say, it'll lead you down one path, but the way you're saying it to me and the way you look while you're saying it doesn't necessarily add up. So maybe if AI is good at that one day, then it could work. But I think that one thing I've learned in the ED is you have to always consider, like drug involvement, or is this person here on their own, like merit and things like that.
Physicians, only want to be contacted by recruiters who know your specific professional interests? Simply call and speak with a PracticeLink physician specialist, and we'll help you create your free profile and pair you with only the job opportunities that you're interested in. Visit PracticeLink.com to get started today.
Do you have any study tips, anything that you could throw out there for advice for maybe a first-year medical student, second-year medical student? Any good study tips? A lot of people tell me the biggest thing with starting first year of medical school is they have to learn how to study properly.
Yes, I agree. I think that part of that is recognizing at the beginning, like you said, what you've studied for, how you've done it for the MCAT, for college. It's just not going to translate. The information is too vast. You have to find a quicker, more efficient way to hit the right highlights in the right way that your brain works to get through the material. Otherwise, you won't get through it. I think that also it's helpful to, ideally quickly, but to look at how other people study, talk to people about how they study, talk to people in the class above you, but ultimately not to compare your study methods with that of other people. So for me, a lot of my friends do Anki, which I don't know if you've talked about that before. It's like these flashcards. And so they'll do like 300 plus cards a day. They just sit in front of their computer like zombies. And I personally would die. I can't do that. I don't have the attention span. I think it's so dreadfully boring. So I probably somewhat unconventionally, I'm a very visual learner. So I use the Sketchy Medical, especially for microbiology and pharmacology. And even still, when I think about a certain drug and the side effects or its indications, like I can picture the picture in my mind. And so it's stuck with me for a very long time. It's like a visual mnemonic. So I would do those. And a lot of times I would take a picture and put it in my notebook on my iPad and listen to it and kind of annotate it. And so for me, writing something down and putting it in a framework visually in one place was really helpful for me. Whereas other people, like, they just want to do rote memorization in the flashcards. So I think it seemed like they were getting a lot more done than me, especially since the amount of time I would spend was necessarily less. But then I found that in a lot of cases, I'd still have comparable scores. So I think it really is a matter of not comparing yourself and just finding what really actually works for you.
And of course, that's where AI will, again, come into play, I'm sure. It will be very useful, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good point.
What about building a CV? Anything there that you want to talk about on a CV, or how to build that CV while you're in medical school?
Yes. Let's see. Two that two different people told me and I thought was really helpful. One was from this professor. I was like seeing if I could do research with him on, it was something to do with like cardiac cells. And I was just doing it because I thought I needed some kind of research. And he was like, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" And I was like, "I mean, yeah, like it's what I'm supposed to do." And he said, "I just want to caution you to only invest your time in things that are genuinely interesting to you. Like, don't try to muscle through some extracurriculars because you think they look good. Like, find research that you're actually drawn to. Be in a field that you're actually drawn to. Don't check boxes that other people have told you should check." And I'm really glad, because I think I would have hated that working in that particular lab. So it was helpful. And I think that the more I thought about it from there, I found projects or organizations that did suit what I enjoyed doing. And it made it a lot easier to make the time for it and to meet like-minded people, which is important. The other thing, which is so practical, and I don't know why I didn't think of it myself, I had an advisor who said, Start a doc, like a Word document that just is things I've done. And just every time you do anything, like you volunteer, you have a meeting with someone important, you apply for something, just document it, just start it. And when it came time to do my match applications and all these different things, I was like, I'm so glad I wrote this down. Like, I actually know what month I did this or who I talked to. And it was so helpful. And a lot of it was useless information I didn't need to know, but the things I needed were in there. So I thought that was super helpful.
Okay. Yeah. That's great advice. How about letters of reference? Anything on there?
Well, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is make sure you thank your letter writers because they're busy people and they go out of their way to do it. So remember to do that. I think the other thing with that is, and maybe this is easier for me being an older medical student, but when you ask them, first of all, say, do you think you could write me a strong letter specifically? Because they might write you a letter, but you want to make sure they think that they will write you a strong letter. And also just be direct, don't beat around the bush. And it's very helpful if you can send them your CV and your personal statement so that they have kind of a reference point for things that you might be wanting to highlight or things that they didn't know about you that they can throw into what they would want to say. I think that anything you can do to make it easier for them is going to make them more likely to write a good letter.
Yeah. A little bit of advice that I usually give folks is it's okay to provide a cheat sheet to that person, a little bit about yourself, right?
Right.
Just in case, right? That way they have it. They can't know everything about you, but you can give them a cheat sheet.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Absolutely. Some of them I even said, these are aspects I want to highlight in my letters. So like maybe talk about this encounter that we had together, or, kind of gave them things that I thought I was hoping they'd highlight based on the other essays I had written about myself.
Yeah. What do you think about asking some people from the class ahead of you about who wrote good letters for them? You think that's a good idea or not a good idea?
I think it's not a bad idea if you are thinking maybe someone could be worth like cozying up to or something. But I think that the best thing with letters is always to go with an organic relationship, someone that you worked with where it went really well. Because even if they aren't necessarily the most impressive person you could have asked, if they have good things to say about you, that means more than whose name is on the letterhead, in my opinion.
Yep. How about, did you attend any conferences during your medical school years? And did you do any poster presentations? And what do you recommend on that? I know it's not always affordable for medical students, and it's not always something that can fit in time-wise. Travel is expensive. But tell me about that. If you went to conferences, how were they? If you presented anything there?
I did not go to any conferences. We had poster presentations at our school, but I don't like research. At least personally, I don't want to do it. Okay. I respect and appreciate people who do like to do it. I personally really enjoy person-to-person interaction. And so a lot of the projects I did were much more qualitative, almost like service projects. So one of the projects I did, we collected data on unhoused people in the area and their different needs and barriers they were facing. We surveyed them directly in order to incorporate their perspective in the drives we were doing and the supplies we wanted to do. We just noticed there was a disconnect in what was being provided and what we were putting our resources towards and what was actually needed. It was like we didn't bring them into the conversation beforehand. So I did a lot more public health type community interaction things versus the research. And I think that goes back to what I was saying is, pour into the things that you're actually interested in, because it gave me a lot more things to talk about in my interviews. I don't have a bunch of wet lab research that I just muscled through so it looks good. I was able to talk about like what I did in my community and why I'm passionate about doing that in my future career, things like that.
Okay. So we will wrap it up for today. So what I would like to ask is, thinking of our audience, future medical students, students who may be in first year, second year, anyone who may be struggling or maybe fighting that anxiety, whether it be the match, whether it be boards, whatever the case may be, what kind of advice would you give people? I always like to say, if you could go back and talk to yourself from 4 years ago and just sit down in a room with yourself and say, hey, McKenna, what were you thinking here? Or why did you waste so much time worrying about this? Or you could have done this so much easier if you had done this. What advice do you have there?
The biggest thing I could say to anyone pre-med school or in school is just to remember your why, because you're going to have moments that knock you down or moments where you think, oh, I don't know if I can actually do this. Imposter syndrome is so real. It seems like everyone else knows what they're doing. I promise you, everyone feels the same way.
Sure.
But just remembering why you want to be there. And sometimes even, going back to the personal statement you wrote that got you into medical school can be helpful, because that was when you were at your peak, like, oh, I just really hope I get in. I really want to be a doctor. And I think it can take you back to that perspective of, I'm actually really grateful that I made it this far, and they believed in me enough that I'm here now. And I think having that perspective of like, no, I am capable, and this is why I'm meant to do this job, can be very motivating and kind of pull you out of that anxiety spiral of, oh, I'm not as good as other people, or I fall short in this way and this way. It really doesn't matter. The lowest score in the whole medicals class is still going to be a doctor. Like, you will still get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's helpful to be humble in that way, but also to be comfortable in your own skin and not, die the sake of comparison.
Very good. Very good. Well, Dr. McKenna Redwine, very glad to have you on the podcast, and I would love to invite you back after you finish up first year. We could talk about so many things about how the first year experience is, and again, ask your advice after going through that first year. So I'd love to have you back, but I do appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I know it's a happy time in your life, and I just wish you all the best, and I hope to catch up with you in a few months.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Charlie. It was great talking to you.